morning, everyone. How is everybody today?
Awake and ready.
Yay. Happy Thanksgiving weekend. It's our joy to be here with all of you. I'm going to begin with a reading from Whispers from Eternity. This is Yogananda's book of prayer demands and poems. So this reading is number 122. O all-pervading Spirit, the breeze of thy inspiration has removed every cloud from my heart. The firmament of my mind is now clear. Purified, I behold only thee everywhere. The sunshine of thy joy spreads rapidly to the farthest shores of my being. After long ages of hunger, I feed on thy light. By thy grace and by my constant wakefulness in thee, may this joy be mine forever, forever and forever. A pastor was walking along the street one day when he notices a little boy across the street having a hard time reaching the doorbell. You can only picture a little boy trying to jump up and down, trying to touch that doorbell. So the pastor decides he's going to help him. So he steps smartly across the street, comes up behind the little boy, places one hand very gently on the boy's shoulder. With the other hand, he leans forward and gives the doorbell a good solid ring. And then he looks down at the little boy and he says, "And now what, my little man?" And the little boy smiles up so innocently. He says, "Now we run." We are here today because we have probably had many lifetimes ringing that doorbell, running around in circles, trying to find our joy in the outward things. We've probably tried it all, the beautiful homes and jobs and wonderful vacations and whatever it is, we can fill in the blank, but none of it truly brought us the joy that we were seeking. A disciple once said to Yogananda, he said, "Sir, I don't think I have very good karma." And Yogananda said very sternly back to him, he says, "It takes very, very, very good karma to even want to know God." So here we all are with very, very, very good karma. I want to read from a book. Our reading this morning was a beautiful reading talking about desires, and then also the Gita reading about action and inaction, and inaction and action, and it was a little hard to follow. This book, Essence of Self-Realization, I have a wonderful connection with it. When Swami Kriyananda wrote this in 1990, I was living at Ananda Village, which is where Ananda started over 40 years ago. And every morning we had a week-long series of classes. Every morning he would read the chapters that he had just written the night before. It was very exciting to hear him read these words hot off the press. Well, he has a chapter called Working Out Karma. So I thought I would read the very first section of it. There's like 12 sections to that topic, but this is the very first one. And this is a discussion between a disciple and Yogananda. "It all seems so complicated," lamented a disciple. "I can see that karma and reincarnation belong together. But when I think of all the actions one initiates in a single lifetime, and then multiply them by God knows how many more lifetimes, I'm appalled. The interactions of cause and effect must be literally endless." "So they are," agreed Yogananda, "as long as one tries to work out his karma in the outer world. One desire leads to another, and that one to still others. Every desire must be fulfilled, every action brought to completion. Even trivial desires," pursued the disciple in dismay. "What about some little wish that I might have had once years ago for an ice cream cone?" "Even that," replied Yogananda emphatically. "Any energy that you put out, however slight, must return to you eventually." The disciple flung his hands up in despair. "Then it all seems quite hopeless. As well might one try calming the waves on the ocean." "It is a big job, I grant you," Yogananda said, Still, it isn't nearly so difficult as it looks. For ask yourself this: what is it that causes the waves to rise and fall in the first place? It's the wind. Without wind, the surface grows calm automatically. Similarly, when the storm of delusion abates in the mind, the waves of action and reaction subside automatically. So what you must do is still the waves of your mind by deep meditation, and then in meditation rid yourself of the consciousness of ego involvement. Once you cease seeing yourself as the causative agent, the waves of delusion may continue to rise and fall outwardly, but you yourself will no longer be affected by them. Would it be helpful, inquired the disciple, to stop acting altogether? Just try it, Yogananda smiled. You'll see that it simply isn't possible to stop acting. Even the decision not to act would be an outward projection of your ego. It would therefore constitute action of a kind. I once met a man in Arizona, he continued, who was disheveled, his clothing a confusion of dirty rags. I said to him, "Why do you dress like that? You aren't so poor that you need to." "I'm a renunciate," the man declared proudly. "On the contrary," I told him, "you are attached all over again, this time to disorder." The Bhagavad Gita teaches that no one can escape action, karma in other words, by refraining from action. But the Gita also teaches an invaluable method for escaping karma. What it recommends is nishkam karma, desireless action. That is action without desire for the fruits of action. If you act thus, you will gradually attain freedom from the bondage of karma. During activity, never feel that it is you who are acting. Act instead with the thought that God is the doer. Pray to Him, "Lord, Thou art acting through me." Even when you make mistakes, make Him responsible for them. He likes that. Of course, you mustn't deliberately do wrong and then lay the blame on Him. But if you do your best but still fail, give your failure to Him. Cling to the thought that you are ever free in yourself. This is the way to final freedom in the Lord. Of course, other things are involved too. Devotion, meditation, divine grace, and so on. But as far as action is concerned, desireless action is the pathway to freedom. Amen. Let's have a song. They were ready for that. What a beautiful reading. What about those three other things? Devotion, meditation, and divine grace. Let's talk about those a little bit more. What about devotion? Why is devotion so important on the path? If we don't have devotion, what happens? Our heart is closed, right? And when our heart is closed, it's harder to feel God's presence, isn't it? It's harder to feel that joy. I've shared many times that I grew up in New York City. I lived there in the 70s and the early 80s when it was a harder place to live than it is now. Having just recently visited New York, it's become a lot more safer. There's just a lot more light. You can see it. But I remember growing up, protecting myself. My shoulders were always forward. I was always hunched forward and afraid somebody was going to attack me. So I had to protect myself. So when I first came to the path, I didn't know what they meant by devotion. What do you mean by devotion? What do you mean by opening the heart? And I was like this, sat like that in class. And I remember my teacher saying, you need to gently roll the shoulders back. And I'm like, well, what is that going to do? Physically, my yoga teacher had to work with me to slowly roll the shoulders back. What would start to happen? This this part starts to expand. Let's try that now. Let's gently roll the shoulders back. And I say gently because I had a hard time opening my heart. So I gently roll the shoulders back. What do you feel there? Do you feel an opening there? That's the first step, is to physically invite ourselves to have that experience. And then what happens? The heart starts to open. And then what happens then? We can feel God's presence more easily in our lives. Sri Yukteswar, who was known as a Jnani a yogi of deep wisdom, he talked about the importance of devotion, of developing that devotion. We all have that devotion. It's like a brick of gold, right? If you have it sitting nicely on the table or the altar, or if you have it buried under the ground, it's still a brick of gold, isn't it? Only it's just buried. Our hearts are there. Our hearts are just buried from what? Maybe this lifetime of growing up in New York and whatever our experiences were, or whatever experiences and lifetimes have brought us that have forced us to close our heart down. But when we begin to open the heart, how do we develop devotion? How do we develop devotion? We come to church on Sundays, right? We chant. What does chanting do? Yogananda said, chanting is half the battle. Why? Why did he say that? Chanting's half the battle. When we can begin to open our heart, we're always trying to lift the energy up, right? If you come to a meditation class that we teach, or if you come to a hatha yoga class, we're always talking about lifting the energy up here to the point between the eyebrows, that point of divine contact. When we open the heart, we're halfway there. Chanting is half the battle, okay? And it's important then to tune into the chanting that you're doing. Having been raised in an Italian household, the Italian chants were the first ones that woke me up to that experience of devotion. When I was first learning how to play the harmonium, somebody said, pick a chant that speaks to you and play it over and over and over. Play it in the dark, play it in the morning, play it whenever. Play it so that you could feel it from inside your heart. And so by chanting like that, we begin to feel God's presence. If you could ever come to any of our harmonium classes, our chanting classes, come. They're a beautiful experience. How else do we develop our devotion? We have pictures of the masters up here, not so that because they want to be up here, but to remind us of that love. Pick a master. We have 5 here, and then there's many others. Who speaks to you? What is it? Is it somebody through their eyes? Are they speaking to you? Are they reminding you of that devotion? Reading books, inspiring stories. I always love to pick up the stories of the different saints that we have. They remind you of that devotion, of that love. What about meditation? It referred to that in our reading. Why is meditation so important? In the reading, there was a very important line. It said we need to cling to the thought that we are free. And by meditation, we're reminded of that thought. Meditation, it's fun to see how it's become common language in our society. Years ago, it used to be hatha yoga was the trend. Now it's meditation, right? The benefits of meditation for stress, for giving you a healthy body. I even saw the other day in the magazine rack of holiday magazines that said meditation for the holidays. It's nothing that meditation can't do. Why? Because what happens? We're reminded of that deeper essence. We're reminded of that smriti, that divine remembrance of who we truly are. And it's in that daily practice where we can dive deep and experience that again and again. It's so important to remember that. But then we're taken right away to the next part, is that divine grace. Okay, we have that divine grace. I love when Advent season comes. Even before we light that first candle, we have the wreath, right? Even before we put the candles on it, and the wreath represents God himself. And it's a circle. It's that never-ending love and grace that's with us all the time. And then we light that first candle about the promise. Yogananda promised, I will come back again and again till one stray brother is left behind. And then we're reminded of his love next week. It's such a beautiful season to remind us of these things. But the spiritual path is 25% our effort, okay? And we have to put in 100% of our effort because we don't know when we're going to become free. It's like when you're my limited time doing construction, one job I had for days was just pulling nails out of, boards. I think they're called snakes or something. I don't know. But anyway, I was pulling those nails out. I never knew when the nail would come out. Just like us, we never know when we're going to be free. We don't know. But then we've got the Guru's grace with us. We have 25% of the Guru's grace, and then 50% of the grace of God. Wow, that's a lot to be grateful for. And it's so beautiful that we have this affirmation on gratitude. A little boy was asked to say Thanksgiving dinner grace, and so he starts by bowing his head and he says, "Dear Lord, I want to thank you for my mommy and daddy and my brothers and sisters and cousins," and on he went, and then he went on to his friends. "I want to thank you for Bobby and Billy and Jimmy and Tommy, and then I want to thank you for this turkey, and the stuffing and the gravy and the mashed potatoes." And then he paused, and there was this long pause. And his father was about to interject when the little boy says out loud for everybody to hear, "If I thank God for the broccoli, won't he know that I'm lying?" The opportunity to thank God for everything. And again, if our heart is closed, if we're not spending time in meditation, if we're not grateful, remembering that divine grace is with us, it's harder to be grateful, isn't it? And then every little thing that happens, why did he say that to me? Why did this happen? Why me? Woe to me, why this? Why this? And then the bigger things. There are some really big things happening in the world. If we can remember those things, remember that gratitude. And then Yogananda would say, take care of the moments. It's in those baby steps. I think Lorna said those baby steps. Let's take those baby steps together. It's in the moments. If we can remember that. He said that mean thing to me, but okay, I'm just going to roll my shoulders back. I'm going to open my heart and go, okay, Lord, I'm grateful even for that. Let me see if I can pour love back. Remembering that's not who this person is. It's not who I am. Underneath all of this, we're spirit. We're joy. We're love. We're kindness. And that's this spirit that we've entered into very quickly. It always seems to come quickly, but I'm always so grateful when it comes because it's a reminder. It's a reminder, the promise, the love that is here with us. So God bless you all and happy Advent season.